You had the Bitfinex hack in 2016, and that was only $72 million, and Bitcoin sold off 20%. So when you think about a $1.4 billion hack and you only have Ethereum off 5%, I think it puts things into perspective. Today's episode is brought to you by Babylon Labs and their vision to build a Bitcoin-secure, decentralized world. They're pioneering the future with the world's first trustless and self-custodial Bitcoin staking protocol, allowing Bitcoin holders to stake BTC on POS chains, L2s, and DA layers without relying on third-party custody, bridges, or wrapped assets. Learn more at babylonlabs.io. There's a lot to get to today, so just want to jump right into what we're seeing play out in the markets after Friday's big hack, the record $1.4 billion hack on Bybit. We covered that as we tried to dig into the details. And right now, if you look at the markets, you got Bitcoin trading lower at 94K, despite the fact, as we're going to dig into, Michael Saylor buying $2 billion worth of Bitcoin on the open market. Going to dig into that and what that means, as well as what Bybit's bridge loan fallout is looking like. You would have expected that to maybe potentially, hopefully, impact things on the Ethereum side a little bit more. At least that was the hope after the hack happened. But if you look at that chart, not too much happening there either, as you're also off close to 6%. So a lot to watch with all of this moving rather quickly as you kind of dig through all of these numbers. And so we're going to get to that. We're going to get to a lot more than just that on today's show, including a vote that we had ourselves at Coinage. Thank you to everybody who voted in it. As we continue to figure out what is newsworthy. As a community-owned show, we turn to our own members, and we're going to get into this vote today as well, which was a 50-50 tie. Ye's token's coming, and we don't know if it's a good thing to talk about or not. I would say no, but it's not up to me here at Coinage. What we do is we listen to our members, and anyone watching this, listening to this, ever reading any of our coverage at coinage.media can always mint to co-own what we do here, as well as tell us what we should be covering. And particularly in the world of meme coins right now, I do think that there's a lot of outrage about them. And we can dig into perhaps what we should be doing about that later on in the show. But first, I want to kick things off with what we are seeing when it comes to flows, because that is usually how we kick off these Monday shows. And when you look at the latest report from CoinShares, it's back-to-back weeks of net outflows across all crypto investment products. This time around, it was actually net outflows of 5 million and 71. 571 is the total number. And when you look at that, obviously not good, but perhaps not surprising, just kind of given all the jitters that we've seen in crypto lately. And so just want to dig into a little bit of what we got from James Butterfield and the team over there, because it is interesting to pair kind of what we've seen in terms of volatility and what that means from institutional investors, particularly when you're thinking about what triggers could stop the bleeding. And things were looking good up until that Bybit hack, which we're going to get into in a sec. But I mean, put that aside. If there weren't that hack, you had ETH. If we can go back to the chart here, you basically had ETH sitting pretty nice at 28.32 before you had the news of the Bybit hack. And then this kind of washed everything out. And so, you know, if it weren't for that, you wonder if we would have seen a rebound in these inflows in this chart, because things were basically on a massive streak. I'm pretty sure it was close to like 20 weeks of inflows. Really, I mean, aside from that one little blip to start the year, which was half of 24 and half of 25. It wasn't a full kind of fair week of inflows since everybody's off for New Year's. But I think that's important to keep in mind, considering, you know, we got to figure out what's going to happen with that 1.4 billion in ETH that was stolen by all accounts, North Korea. And so, you know, obviously there's going to be some jitters there. Obviously, institutional investors might take a pause in terms of trying to figure out what they want to do with all that. But when you move past it, back up a couple weeks. I don't want to use the term roll back a couple weeks for reasons we'll get into as well. But in general, the momentum was there. And so it is kind of tough to see, that all of that gets washed away because of this hack. But no doubt, certainly a sizable one, perhaps the largest one we've ever seen at $1.4 billion. But at the same time, as much as there is that, I think it's worth reflecting a little bit because if you think about what happened back in 2016 when there was that Bitwise, sorry, not Bitwise, my bad, Bitwise, when there was the Bitfinex hack, you had the Bitfinex hack in 2016, and that was only $72 million, the size of that hack, and Bitcoin sold off 20%. And so when you think about a $1.4 billion hack and you only have Ethereum off 5%, I think it puts things into perspective, at least in terms of how resilient the space has become because of how large the space has become. And, that could be celebrated, or it could also be maybe worth digging into in terms of another big thing that we normally cover on Mondays, which is Michael Saylor at Strategy back with a big purchase of his own that I want to bring up on our side here. As he always does, announced it in a tweet. And if we show you that tweet, it looks a little something like this, which is announcing that he acquired almost $2 billion worth of Bitcoin at an average price of 97,514. And that's interesting because it didn't really move the market all that much, which again, you got to think about the size. At some point, not too long ago, a $2 billion purchase would have done a lot, but not the case when we look at the Bitcoin chart because no real reaction, almost steady as she goes. So can't count on Saylor buys either to really turn things around. And again, kind of coming at a time where there was a lot more other things, a lot of other things for markets and investors to digest, including that hack. And so if you consider all that, again, not sure if we put all the pieces together, there's, a lot of apples to apples comparisons, whether it's fund flows, whether it's what Michael Saylor is doing, because of that big Bybit hack. And of course, we covered this for you at Coinage. I guess I could even bring our story up from Friday, but in real time, it was pretty interesting to kind of get everyone's reactions and try and figure out what exactly was going on. But if you read that one, it's hard to really wrap your head around a hack like this because you've got an environment where you think everything is going to be fine, right? When you're working with Safe, if you're Bybit and you're moving funds around, you'd probably be like, hey, there is no qualm here because, we use Safe all the time. And I think a lot of the specifics around how that hack worked are very interesting in terms of signing a mass transaction and having everyone think it was just a normal routine. Hey, let's move the money from Bybit over to our other wallet. And then it gets intercepted and sent to what seems like North Korea. And now we're watching it all play out on chain as this money moves around. And so all of that is quite interesting. But in real time, these things are never fun to watch because you're seeing funds and you're seeing the panic and you're seeing everything play out. And you never really know what's going to happen next. And now we're in that stage where we have a little bit more detail, at least in terms of what happens next. So I want to bring up a little bit of that because at the time, as we'll play right now, a lot of people were talking about, okay, Bybit needs to plug this $1.4 billion hole in ETH. They don't have it. That means they're probably going to need to go to the open market and buy some. And we heard from their head of derivatives, basically stopping all of those rumors in their tracks. I just want to play what he said on the live stream. By the way, shout out to Bybit for the way they were able to kind of fill everyone in on what was happening. I think this could have been a lot worse in terms of bank runs we've seen in the past. To only have, it was pretty crazy that they were able to process all the withdrawals, but there was a lot more money that could have flown out the door, I think, at Bybit if they weren't so fast. They went from like the hack happening on Friday, 3 hours, I think, passed between the hack happening and like being on a live stream that was better produced than the show. Again, Texas is gone. Don't blame me. We're trying a new little format out. But for them to do all that was pretty insane in just a few hours and kind of convey to people that, hey, look, we have enough money. We're not in trouble. Don't panic. Like that, I think, has set a new standard in the crypto space for these scramble teams and all these exchanges to figure this out. But anyways, just want to play a little bit of what we heard from Bybit in that when they were explaining what was going to happen with that $1.4 billion hole and what they were going to do with their purchases to plug it. Here's what we heard on Friday, and then we'll catch you up to speed on what we saw play out over the weekend. I hope this works. Let's see.
Our treasury has more than enough reserves to cover the Ethereum notional amount, but we don't have enough Ethereum right now. So what does that mean? If you're thinking, I see some people on Twitter is like, oh, Bybit needs to buy huge amounts of Ethereum. I don't think that might be the case. I think we're going to have to discuss internally what the best course of action is. Of course, we're going to compensate our customers.
So they were going to compensate their customers and they were figuring out the best course of action. Eventually, it sounds like what they landed on there was a bridge loan. And there were a few different players that kind of came to their rescue, if you want to call it that, in terms of how Bybit was able to navigate, again, plugging that hole, including BitGet. We saw them kind of be the first ones to jump in and throw a loan their way. And then everything else play out in terms of what Ben Zhao was saying on Twitter around plugging that hole. And it seems like, based on his latest tweets, that they're already back to normal in terms of where they're at. I just want to bring up his tweet basically saying that Bybit has completely plugged that hole. And if you think about it, there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, if you're out there and you're thinking, okay, they're going to have to go buy $1.4 billion on the open market, that probably would support price and that probably would boost things back up. But at the same time, if you use a bridge loan, you don't see any of that play out. And so I guess there's mixed feelings, but at the same time, you don't want another exchange, the second largest, by the way, in the world, to have another bankruptcy or have all these things happen. That would not be good to have the contagion domino effect. We saw that play out in 2022. I don't think anybody wants that either. And so kind of different ways to think about what happened at Bybit. And obviously there's a lot more time to go through this, but just want to bring up this tweet from Ben kind of walking through exactly where Bybit's at now. He says his latest update fully closed the ETH gap. A new audited proof of reserves report will be published soon to show that they're back to 100% one for one. And so, when you think about all of that, there we go. You can see it now. So you think about all that, again, moved very quickly to manage all this. They were pretty transparent with what was going on. As far as, I think these things are concerned, that's kind of, I guess, the way that it's matured. I think it showed the space has matured a bit, where you have people jumping in, helping out, handling all this in real time. It's pretty cool to see. I think there are definitely some narratives there to highlight in terms of how different it is now versus a hack that may have happened in 2018, 2022, things like that. Of course, there are also maybe some other things to highlight, which are equally as fun, which was you had, as soon as this was going on, you had a lot of people making some spicy posts. I want to highlight this one from Solana's co-founder, Raj. And it kind of triggered a little bit of a storm when you think about people raising the fact that, in Ethereum's early days, there was a DAO hack and they did have a hard fork to basically undo that hack. And so you had a lot of people making jokes that you could do this again and just have it be the case that, this hack never happened. And one of those people doing that was Arthur Hayes. This was the headline. Actually, it's been updated at CoinDesk. But this was something that triggered a bit of an explosion as well, because you had this piece, which was not drawing community ire when it was published. It was that some people in the ETH community were actually talking about rolling back the Ethereum network to make it so this hack never happened. And you had some pretty angry responses to that, including press at the Ethereum Foundation. Joe is tweeting about this, basically calling for this to be taken down. This was the original tweet from CoinDesk saying, look, Arthur Hayes isn't speaking for everybody here. In fact, a lot of people in the Ethereum space are not even saying this at all. And I think that's interesting because I'm pretty sure this tweet is now gone. Even if you wanted to look at it, I think that tweet is now gone. And obviously, as we just showed, this title, I believe, has been updated. And so it seems like Joe's point was made and CoinDesk listened at least partially to that point. But in any case, no one, I don't think, at least from what I saw, and Laura Shin was talking about this over the weekend too, no one I saw was actually legitimately talking about rolling back Ethereum in the same context of just make this $1.4 billion hack go away, go poof. I don't think anyone was seriously floating that. At least no one serious in crypto was floating that. But it was immediately memeified, and I do think that that was part of the story. That's pretty good too, just given the fact that ETH Denver is coming up. I liked some of these tweets out there in framing it this way. That basically North Korea's $1.4 billion hack essentially was, um, you know, them playing out North Korea essentially creating a strategic reserve. Some of those takes I think were pretty good, particularly ones thinking that this is what ETH Denver is going to look like. But in general, this is what happens. This is like the problem you live by when it comes to hacks like these and crypto specifically. Is that when this happens, you kind of live by the sword, you die by the sword. And obviously, Ethereum's grown so much to where I don't think anyone reasonably assumes that Vitalik could say, "Yeah, we should do this," and it would happen. I don't think that's where Ethereum's at all anymore. And so it was kind of interesting to see people who are deep in the sauce in Ethereum and in crypto kind of know that all of these were jokes, because I don't think anyone was saying, "Yeah, let's roll it back and make it that this hack never happened. So let's have another hard fork." Didn't see that from anybody serious, and yeah, so that's kind of where that's at. But I do think, to shift gears a little bit, I do think it is kind of interesting to think about that context and, the narrative and the optics around it. Now you have essentially North Korea inheriting $1.4 billion. And a lot of people aren't exactly sure about that when it comes to, again, the narrative that crypto is only used to support, bad things. Bad things being North Korea, depending on how you feel about that. But it is perhaps a good segue into another bad thing that a lot of people talk about in crypto, and the only reason why a lot of people are in crypto, if you believe kind of that narrative that's been out there for a while, and that is meme coins. And it's something that we chatted about last week as well after the Malay launch of the Viva la Libertad token, and that collapse, nuking 95%. And now there's another one to talk about or not talk about, as the case may be, depending on what we should do here at Coinage and what you all listening and watching this may think. It's not too late necessarily to sway things for reasons I will get into now. But a lot happened over the weekend when it comes to more details coming out around Kanye's launch and his token. And again, there's a big split in the crypto community over whether or not these things are good or not to talk about. And I will get into that now, because you have a man who is a self-proclaimed Nazi twice removed, I guess. And maybe he undid that take and then said he was a Nazi again, and has referred to this token as a swastika coin as well. And so Coinage proposed this vote. It was a vote to boycott coverage of Ye's token, and there was a lot of discussion about this. I want to thank everybody, by the way, for a healthy discussion in our Telegram chat. If you haven't yet and you want to join what we're doing, you can mint an NFT at coinage.media and hop in our Telegram chat for members as well. It's where we discuss things like this, what we want to do with our platform, and what we think is worthwhile to talk about, what we think is not worthwhile to talk about. And as we've been covering on our show for quite some time, basically, there's a lot of anger around these things. There's a lot of anger around meme coins. A lot of serious players in the space don't want us to talk about things like this. And what am I to do? What am I to do with that? I'm not entirely sure. It's not my call to make. We're a community-owned outlet. So the only way I thought possible to really take everybody's thoughts on it and digest it into some actionable thing to do is through this vote. And it was a 50-50 tie, which I think just kind of goes to show, A, how split this community is on things like this. Because yes, it is true. If you get in early enough on these meme coins, then you're going to make money. Is the same case with Trump. Problem is, a lot of these things are shrinking in terms of how quickly you can go to make money. It was the same thing with Libra token. It was like, okay, if you got in, you were fine in the first minute, but if not, you probably lost money. And honestly, with the Trump coin, take a look at this chart, because with the Trump coin, you're getting back to close to where a lot of people bought in. If you bought in at $7, you're only up 100% right now, and most people probably did not, unless you were watching it that day. Like, these things are continuing to look like this. And so our main point was in this vote that these could be doing more harm than good, not just in terms of the narrative, what crypto is, but also in terms of if you bring it to people's attention, they're most likely getting caught in this part of the shitstorm. And that's not good for them either. And that's not even getting into, to be honest with you, I think a larger question with this particular swastika coin in mind, which is, let's just say this was an ICO. If this were an ICO and it was a self-described Nazi trying to raise money for things like that, by the way, being featured in videos with a swastika on his shirt, if this was a GoFundMe for Nazis, would you want to cover that as an outlet? Would you want to bring attention to it as an outlet? Is it newsworthy? Probably, but because it's Kanye, that's why it's newsworthy, and public wants to watch that. But do you want to use your platform to promote it? And I get it. By the way, there was a big discussion, from some other outlets after we talked to them about this. It was like, hey, it's going to be out there regardless if Coinage covers it or not. I don't know if that's the best way to look at things. So there's going to be things out there, but it's a question of, do you want to use your platform to promote these things? And that's the only thing that we can control at Coinage. And so I just want to thank everybody who voted in this. Technically, it being a split vote, now it's back on me to figure out what we want to do here. And I think as the facts come out, we'll make that decision in real time. But the larger point that I want to make today is thank you to everyone for having this discussion with us in our Telegram. And thank you to everyone who voted, because I think that's the only way to really figure out what we want to do here as a community-owned outlet, what kind of stands we want to make. And at the very least, if this brought any sort of discussion to other outlets, other exchanges, by the way, what they're going to do when this token is out there, whether or not they're going to list it the same way they listed Trump and Libra. Obviously, a lot of eyes are going to be on it. Kanye has 33 million followers, although his account is now somewhat hidden because he's been posting porn on his account. So who knows? Maybe not all of them will see it. But yes, there's a lot of tough questions, I think, for crypto to ask, and we will be asking them per usual as the only community-owned outlet in the space. That's what we're here to do, to cover the real story of crypto. And sometimes the real story of crypto is a little bit more complicated than just what you see in the headlines. And as a community-owned outlet in this space, as a Web3 outlet that is a DAO, we are in the arena along with these other projects. So it at least gives us a little bit of an inside view of how difficult some of these decisions are. And I don't doubt that a lot of these exchanges are already having discussions over whether or not they want to list it. I don't doubt that there are probably a lot of discussions from other on-ramping companies like Moonshot, whether or not they want to participate in something like this. But again, the fact that Binance's founder, I should probably bring that tweet up. The fact that CZ is out there basically also, I don't know if it's fair to say courting, but considering that he's responding to Ye on X about these things, it is a weird look, because you're going to get involved with these things. It's going to be perchance on Binance's chain, if you are to believe what's kind of going on there. I can't even bring up this tweet. There are a couple tweets that I don't even think I can bring up. They may have been deleted, they may have not. But I mean, at the very least, these are These are real things that are happening. And I don't know if CZ is aware, but when Kanye is out there tweeting a swastika next to the Binance logo, which is the tweet that I don't think I can bring up right now. But you do have these where he is referring to things, his token as a swastika coin. And I don't know. I'll stop there. Because, of course, as Coinages community in our Telegram knows, we've maybe chatted enough about this for now. We've done everything we can. Thank you for tuning in. As always, you can check out the biggest headlines in crypto and around the world of Web3 at Coinage on our site anytime you want, and our members can co-own this with us. A lot of great stuff still there, and will be updated as we head to ETH Denver per usual. Going to be on the ground. I'm going to be speaking out there with a few different folks, this being the third consecutive ETH Denver we're going to be at, and hosting our own event, by the way. If you're out there, swing by. I think right now we're technically at capacity because I think 270 people applied to visit us out at ETH Denver at the Decentralized Media Summit. Excited to be hosting that one as well this time around. But in any case, hit us up. Hit me up if you're going to be out there. Would love to chat with people as we are on the ground at ETH Denver. But for now, thank you again for tuning in.